Hey everybody, this is Falcon Wing, and we are doing something a little different this time. There was a whole bunch of news that came out this week, a whole lot of Pokemon stuff, and I figured what might be fun is if I got a couple of the other staff members in, and we just sat down and we talked about some of the other stuff, like the anime, some of the Sun and Moon news that came out, Pokémon Generations, which I think we were all excited for. So let's introduce who our panel is today. First off, we've got Hanzo in plain sight.
AKA, I'm just going to go as Hanzo to make this easier. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the ease. And then we have Maniacal Engineer.
Knock, knock.
No, we're not doing that.
Aww. Alright, fine. Hello, folks. I'm Maniacal Engineer, Bulbagarden's resident mad scientist and punster, but for the sake of convenience, I'll just be going as Engie today.
Alright then. So, to kick things off, we got some big jaw-dropping Sun and Moon news this week. This was what was advertised to us as coming out on Wednesday. Everybody got up early to watch the trailers drop. And we got more on the Ultra Beasts, and that was pretty much it. So, did anybody else besides me actually get up early for this?
No.
I get up early anyway to get to work, but yeah, I think I was actually driving to work when the news broke, as usual.
I value my sleep too much, so I just saw it after the fact.
Alright, well, I ended up getting up to watch it like 15 minutes before I had to go to work. And I'm gonna be honest, it was kind of weird, just for once, having this big news release that was pre-scheduled not really have much in it, at least compared to previous weeks.
True enough. You know, I thought it was going to be a very, very busy week for the YouTube channel, and it was. But, you know, I had thought you'd need to work on the Pokémon Generations video, and then, you know, another video for for the release on this past week as well. But no, it ended up being more Ultra Beast news.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan of this Ultra Beast concept. I mean, we don't really know much about it, to be fair, but to me, they don't even look like Pokemon, which is the biggest hit to me. I just don't like the design at all. I mean, they almost look more like Digimon than Pokemon, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've been seeing a lot of people bring up, is that they think that they're going to be, they're going to feature in some prominent battle, and some people even think, oh, we'll be able to catch them. But honestly, they're not really advertising them as being Pokemon. They don't look like Pokemon, and they don't seem to be behaving like Pokemon. So, I mean, I theorized in the videos that they might be interdimensional counterparts of some of our NPCs, but I've already accepted that that's a bit far out as far as theories go. What about you guys?
A bit far-fetched, you might say?
No.
Aw, you guys never let me have any fun.
Womp womp.
Anyway, no, I do tend to agree. It's either their alternate universe counterparts of some of the main characters that we've seen so far released in the game, or they are literally those characters, and at some point in the game they will transform into Ultra Beasts and try to destroy the world. Or something like that, anyway.
I think it's a less sort of extreme sort of origin. I don't think it's like an alternate universe thing or anything like that. I think at most it's going to be some sort of scientific type experiment, maybe from the Foundation. Maybe that's sort of where I would guess, is that it's some sort of science experiment that went wrong.
Actually, that's not a bad line of thought, considering the fact that UB02 Beauty does kind of look like the head of the Aether Foundation. And isn't Lily supposed to be her sister, or did I make that up on the spot?
Well, there's been no official word on how Lily relates to them, or if she does, but I'll be honest, she does seem to have a lot of design elements in common with the Aether Foundation, specifically hair color, dress, eye color.
Yeah, so it looks like the genetics are there, but that's no guarantee of anything.
The only reason I'm kind of questioning that thought I just came up with, the science experiment, is just because that's an origin that we've seen before. Between Mewtwo and Genesect, they've had a lot of sort of science experiments gone wrong type of Pokemon that we've already kind of seen.
And you've kind of already got that in the form of Type Null this time around too, which Speaking of Type Null, Mewtwo was more of a genetic engineering laboratory kind of thing. I get a feeling when we find out about Type Null next month, it'll be, its origin is more like alchemy or like magic as opposed to science, but I could be completely off my rocker here.
Although that could also explain the Ultra Beasts, as if the origin of the Ultra Beasts and the origin of Type Null are somehow connected.
Actually, that's something that I've been thinking about, because they said that Type Null was created with the power to rival creatures spoken of in myth. Now, I think a lot of people have thought that is Solgaleo and Lunala, but what if Type Null actually exists to counter the Ultra Beasts?
That is definitely a theory that I could get behind, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that too, actually, now that you mention it.
I mean, we don't really have many details on the Ultra Beasts. We just know that they're this new threat that everybody's hearing about and the Aether Foundation is doing research on. But let's be honest here. In Pokemon, all myths are true. Everybody knows that these creatures exist at some point and that there's all these stories about them. It's just, maybe this is a legend reborn in a way.
That makes a lot of sense.
So would that make it like an ancient threat, or would that make it like just some sort of alien or interdimensional creature? Because, I mean, we've already got the fossil Pokemon that are ancient Pokemon. We've already got, like, Arceus, who's the god and creator of all Pokemon and the universe and blah, blah, blah. So what exactly could these Ultra Beasts do that hasn't already been done?
I'm honestly not sure. I think for me, it's just... They put Solgaleo and Lunala on the box art, and they said, these are our title legendaries. And then they've really done nothing to elaborate on how they relate to anything. I mean, they've even gone so far as to say that the Aether Foundation and Team Skull and the Ultra Beasts, they seem to be more central to the plot than Solgaleo and Lunala are.
I've noticed that.
They could show up at the end, like Rayquaza style. Could be a possibility where you're not really thinking about them because Groudon and Kyogre are the box art sort of legendaries. So they could be kind of flipping that around where other sort of legendaries, Ultra Beasts, kind of take the main plot and then they show up at the very end as sort of a stop the madness kind of legendary like Rayquaza does in Emerald.
That's an interesting theory. I mean, another potential question to ask is just how many Ultra Beasts do we think there are going to be? Now, because of the formatting of the names, UB01, UB02, there are at least going to be 10. I don't quite think there are going to be as many as 99, especially if they're going with alternate forms, like UB02. Is it expansion or absorption?
That's actually the thing, is that the names are different depending on region. It was expansion in Japan, but it's absorption over here in the States.
Ah, so that's part of the confusion. In any case, the point still stands. I really don't think they're going to have all that many, especially if UB02 already has 2 different forms. There are going to be at least 10, otherwise why bother having, 01, 02? But... are we talking about like an endless wave of these guys, or are we talking about like 10 or 11 of these guys? And how exactly are they related to the game? How much of what we've seen so far is actually the in-game, plot versus how much of it is actually post-game?
I don't think they've ever, and I could be wrong here, like sort of before the game's release, I don't think they've ever hinted at any post-game stuff in trailers, news, leaks, anything like that for any of the previous series games. I could be wrong there, but I can't seem to recall that.
Well, there's also a first time for everything.
That's very fair.
The only thing that I can recall is that I think the Pokemon World Tournament got a little bit of press. I know you could access it prior to the Elite Four, but I think most of its content was locked to post-game. And I'm pretty sure the Battle Frontier was advertised for Emerald just because that was such a big new inclusion. But you're right, most of the time they don't really advertise the post-game stuff at all.
Well, the reason that I ask is because it does seem like the whole search for the Zygarde cells seems like a post-game thing to me. But, again, there's not a lot of information to work with. The games haven't been released yet, so I'm just kind of talking out of my hat here, although not literally. Otherwise, the audio quality would be bad.
I do agree with you. It seems like we're getting a ton of really disjointed stuff, and I have no idea how it all fits together. I mean, Team Skull is one thing. That's your typical sort of evil team. That's one piece. Then the search for the Zygarde cells. Then the Aether Foundation. Then then you've got your typical sort of, well, they're not gym leaders anymore. They're the trial captains. But it seems like we've got like this really sort of disjointed kind of plot strings, and I have no idea how they're going to fit together, whereas a lot of the previous games, the plot made a lot more sense, even sort of before everything was released. You've got like your evil team, so everyone kind of knows what direction that's going to go, and you've got a couple legendaries. So we could definitely be seeing some post-game stuff too. I would definitely believe that, or they could be doing like a side plot type thing, which they've never really done before, where they've got your typical journeying sort of trial captains or gym leader plot. You've got your evil team plot. They could easily be adding a third side plot, which something they've never really done before, but that would be pretty cool if they do it right.
Now, to complicate that a little bit further, UB02, Beauty, and Absorption are version exclusives. So if these guys are supposed to be a key part of the plot, how do you justify making them version exclusives? Because how they behave and how they interact with everybody else is going to differ depending on the game that you bought. And we haven't really seen changes like that very much in the games. Like, you know, even when they had Reshiram and Zekrom, it's, oh, you have this Dragon of Truth, you have this Dragon of Ideals, one is lightning, one is fire. But how they interacted with the plot really didn't change anything. But Beauty and Absorption look so drastically different, and their descriptions describe them as being very different from each other.
Well, it could be similar to sort of past events. When they say version exclusive, they could easily both like appear and be involved in the plot. I mean, when you, again, to bring up Ruby and Sapphire, you've Groudon and Kyogre. One of them, quote unquote, was version exclusive to each of them, but they both showed up in the plot. They both had their role. I mean, obviously, depending on which of those two games you played, one of them played a slightly more important role in that game's plot. So for Sapphire, it was Kyogre who sort of took the stage mainly, but you wouldn't see that much of a difference. I'm assuming that's kind of what that means, is that you can only sort of, quote unquote, capture one of them or tame it or become friends with it or whatever they choose to do. But it's not like the other one won't appear at all.
Well, the other question that kind of stems from the two UB02 versions being version exclusives is, what if they are alternate universe counterparts, or what if they are the characters themselves that we've been seeing so far? Does that mean that in one version, one person is actually an Ultra Beast in disguise, whereas in the other version it's actually someone else? Or, But at the end of the day, I feel like what Game Freak is doing here, what Nintendo is doing here, is they're taking, the version exclusives, and they're turning it up to 11, as it were. Because, in the past, you had games like Diamond and Pearl, Ruby and Sapphire, where pretty much the only difference between them was a little bit of the flavor. In Diamond and Pearl in particular, you had your version exclusives, and you had, you were either fighting Dialga or Palkia. But at the end of the day, you were still fighting Team Galactic. Literally everything else happened the exact same. And, your story was the exact same. What they're doing here with Sun and Moon really seems like they're thinking outside of the box on this one, or outside of the box art on this one.
Moving on from that one.
Seriously, you guys don't let me have any fun.
I will admit, I will be disappointed if they don't take full advantage of the opportunities that they're creating for themselves. If it's just another skin, another copy-paste of the other version's plot, if they don't make changes to justify the continued version exclusivity that they're going with, that will be a little disappointing.
I agree.
I mean, they're 0 for 6 in that regard, so I wouldn't exactly have too much faith there, but hey, I could be wrong.
I am a naive optimist.
on the other hand, we are also seeing a lot of different changes. Like, I think all of us would have thought when Sun and Moon were first announced that there'd be gym leaders, there'd be, an Elite Four, a standard linear plot. But, let's assume for a moment we haven't seen any end of game or post game content. We're looking at a game that's probably more focused on exploration than any other Pokemon game in the past. So theoretically, I actually, and again, I will probably end up being disappointed, but we could be looking at a game here that is going to break the mold, a game where they finally put that mold breaker ability to good use.
So, speaking of changing things around, let's talk about the anime for a second. There's been, I think, a lot of vocal feedback on how the anime looks. Have you guys actually gotten a chance to see the trailer yet?
I have, yes.
I did see the trailer. It kind of looked to me like it got a bit cut off at the end, but that's, that's probably just me. Like, there was this action scene where he was riding the Sharpedo, and then all of a sudden it stopped.
I think that was just you, yeah.
So, everybody else under the sun seems to have given their opinions on how the anime looks now, because it is definitely a very drastic change in style from what X and Y did. Like, even with the first Team Rocket introduction in X and Y, I made the joke that the animation department got a huge bump in their budget, and they just went all out and had as much fun as they could with it. It doesn't look like the Sun and Moon anime is going to allow for such flashy visuals. That being said, what do you guys think? Do you guys like the change in style? Do you like the more cartoony nature of some of the character designs, or is this just not working for you?
I mean, I'm not a particularly big fan of what I've seen so far, to be perfectly honest. I do feel, it is kind of strange. Visually it is kind of strange, but, maybe that's just those, Z-move positions being so funky that I have to kind of get used to it. But it looks goofy.
So this is where I give my caveat of I haven't watched the anime regularly since May left. So it's been almost a decade, and I didn't watch every episode of even AG. So it's probably been 15 years since I watched every episode of this show. But from what I can see, I think it almost makes me more open-minded to the art style, just because I haven't been watching the show regularly. I've kind of been hit and miss on some of the episodes. Like I've watched some of the final league stuff from this recent generation, but I'm okay with it. I think it's been going on for 20 years now. We're almost at 20 years, and I think they need a fresh approach. So I'm cautiously optimistic about how it looks, and the whole Ash going to school thing. I'm not thinking it's going to be like a whole different show where we're like, oh my god, what happened to the show? I think it might be sort of a little different, especially because his mother and Mr. Mime are seen. We haven't seen Mr. Mime in probably a decade. So it's one of those things where
I think we see him in those rare instances where Ash actually returns to Pallet Town. But yes, your point is taken.
So I'm actually, I think, more cautiously optimistic about it than probably most people who watch the anime regularly, just because it kind of got boring to me after 200 episodes, and there's been 400 more or so since then, and it's just one of those things where I'm sort of really open to them making any sort of fresh changes to the Ash journeys through a new region, picks up the female protagonist or female gym leader from that region, Brock shows up, or in this case they've had sort of different things than Brock since the last couple generations.
I was going to say, Brock hasn't shown up since Diamond and Pearl.
Exactly. Showing my age a little bit.
But they do always pick up a male gym leader of some kind.
Exactly. So I'm sort of like, let's try something new. So I'm definitely going to give this one a shot, which is something I haven't done in 3 generations. So I'm actually going to watch the first few episodes, and maybe it might be pretty good.
Now, this is sort of the interesting thing here, because you're right. It has been hundreds of episodes since the anime started, and it's obviously gone through a lot of changes. I mean, during the Sun and Moon arc, I'm pretty sure we're going to hit the magic number 1,000, and I can't think of very many shows that have hit 1,000 episodes ever. Like, nobody plans for that. And so the Sun and Moon anime obviously does need to go in a different direction. You're right, it can't be more of the same. However, they've already established that Ash is going to Alola with the intent of going to school, that he's going to study to be a better trainer rather than really focusing on his continued goal of, I'm going to be the greatest Pokemon master in the world. So, I don't know. What do you guys think of that setup?
I'm trying to remember the last time Ash went to school. I think it was one of the earlier Indigo League episodes, and I seem to recall he did not do very well. On the other hand, that was the same episode where when you looked at a Pokemon's silhouette, you were supposed to guess it was a Jigglypuff from above and not a Voltorb, so, I suppose it was a trick question.
Did he go to the trainer school in Hoenn? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I suppose a little bit of caveat to everything I've been saying, too, is I really didn't watch Black and White, and, I also didn't really watch X and Y until the later League thing with the whole hype about Ash maybe winning the League. So, I'm a little out of date, too, but I honestly don't remember if Ash went to the Hoenn school. He might have, just because that was where Roxanne would have been, but I don't know if he ever actually went there as a student. I think Brock went there as a teacher, though.
Well, more recently, he did go to visit the Snow Point school that Candace teaches at in the Diamond and Pearl arc. That's where he got that whole meme of the inspirational phrase, "Gotta write this down." So that's the most recent one that I can remember. But even then, these were only ever just single episode things, and this might be a single episode thing as well. I think there is a Pokemon trainer school on Melee Island in Sun and Moon. At least I think they've hinted at that. But this seems to be more of their actual format to start off the season. We saw in the trailer that he's in class with some of the other trial captains, and I think Lily as well.
That's what it looked like, yeah.
And I have to wonder, why are these people in school with him? What do they need to learn that Ash needs to learn as well?
I mean, Ash, for all the flack that he's given, for all the, for all the people hating on how he's never actually won a league, you've got to admit, he's at least made it into, the final 8 in Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos. So he is a talented trainer, in spite of all the bashing that he does get. So I would think him to be on the par or on the level of the trial captains who, we really don't necessarily know much about at this point, but from what we've seen in the anime trailer, it does look like they're also just kids.
That's a good point. And I will be honest, I do recognize that Ash does have a series of achievements. In many of the non-league competitions that he enters, he does come out either on top or he comes out very close to the top. And then, of course, he won the Orange League and he won the Battle Frontier. So he does have many credits to his name. But I think that ultimately makes me wonder even more. It's almost like the Seto Kaiba Duel Monsters Academy. Like, what do you teach at this school that is going to be important to these people that wouldn't already know this?
Perhaps it's like we're kind of thinking that it's going to be like this really sort of entry-level remedial academy, where it could almost be more of like a doctorate type program, like almost like a Pokemon battling training doctorate, where you're taking like all these really talented advanced youth and trying to really form them into the next generation of like Elite Four and champions almost, in sort of that way, where you're looking at like, this isn't just a regular school, this is really advanced trainers, because as you guys have been saying, for as much as crap as Ash gets, he's probably one of the 20 or 30 sort of, in this world, the most sort of respected and like sort of his achievements, because as we said, he's top 8 in 6 regions, which has to be impressive.
At least top 8.
There are plenty of people who've pointed out that they have seen Ash compete before, that they've watched the league on official broadcasts, and I mean, even as far back as movie number 1, there's that one guy who's like, "Hey, I'm looking for a trainer named Ash from Pallet Town." It's like, people do know who this kid is. So, I don't know, I think that's just the thing, is the setup seems very contradictory to what we know, because even in X and Y, Ash took on more of a mentor-like role with Serena, because actually he's been doing that with a lot of his companions over the recent years, because
May and Dawn.
yeah, you have the female protagonist who usually ends up being the rookie or somebody who's trying to make something of themselves, and Ash is like, hey, here's this inspirational thing that I learned when I started out my journey.
See, that's why I think it's less of a, like, this is how you train a Pokemon, like, intro level of school, and more of, like, an advanced academy or, like, some sort of grooming type academy for, like, really advanced trainers. Because if we're going to assume that the trial captains are sort of on par with gym leaders, which I think is a fair assumption to make, you're talking about these trainers who we haven't seen much in any sort of Pokemon media of sort of how you become a gym leader. But I have to assume that becoming a gym leader takes some high level of talent. I mean, even Flannery sort of inherited hers, which was weird. I remember that from ages ago. But she's still a talented trainer, so I think there has to be some level of talent or ability that we're assuming these trial captains have as well.
In the I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that we've never really seen, how people qualify to be gym leaders. In the episode Showdown in Dark City, you actually had two gyms that weren't actual official league gyms competing to try to become Dark City's gym. And, at the end of the day, the Pokemon League sent a representative who turned out to be Nurse Joy, and she evaluated both of the gyms to be unfit due to unsportsmanlike behavior, and how they were essentially going to war in the city to try to become the Pokemon League, the official Pokemon League gym for that city. So we've kind of seen, but between that and Flannery inheriting her grandfather's gym, we've kind of seen somehow how people become gym leaders, but what we haven't seen is throughout the entire Pokemon world, there's this overarching Pokemon League that at least 6 regions have this whole gym, Elite Four, and Pokemon League system. And, we've seen it's the same guy, I think it's like Mr. Goodshow or something, in charge of this. So it's, that there's some kind of global or universal standard that needs to be achieved here. And maybe you're spot on, and that's exactly what they're learning in this class. I really don't know how you would teach it in a classroom of all places, but from what we've seen of schools in the Pokemon universe, it's hardly just sit at the desk, take a quiz, and you're done. There's bound to be some kind of practical aspect to it with Pokemon battling, trying out new strategies, and so forth.
There's something in there that you mentioned that I want to draw attention to, that I think the Sun and Moon anime is probably going to show off a little bit better than the games. In previous generations, the role of a gym leader has been very different depending on the region that you're in. In many cases, like in Kanto and Hoenn, they're reputable and respectable members of the community. And starting in...
Except Giovanni.
Well...
Hey,
Giovanni probably bought the league off or something. Then starting in Hoenn, you started seeing them take on more leadership roles, like Roxanne ended up being one of the teachers or the instructors at the Pokemon Trainer School. And then as time got further on, they became more like leaders in their community, to the point like in Opelucid City, Drayden is the mayor of the town. And now you have Alola, which doesn't have gym leaders, but it does have kahunas, and there's one for each island, so it seems like the kahunas have actually taken over the gym leaders title, not so much the trial captains.
I think that's still kind of vague. I mean, I could be missing something, but as far as I'm aware, we don't really know who is sort of the quote-unquote boss of the island. I think you're right, and the kahuna is probably the equivalent of like the mayor of the island or the king, depending on what you'd want to call it, but mayor is probably a better title. So I think it's almost kind of separate, where the trial captain is sort of the quote-unquote gym leader of the island, where you battle them, you do their test, and you complete the totem challenge, and then you are able to sort of pass on, and the kahuna is almost like the leader of the island, and they have a different role. But that's all speculation.
No, I mean, I have to agree with you on that one, Hanzo. I tend to view the trial captains more as the gym leaders, and the kahunas more as the Elite Four. If we're if we're drawing parallels. You know, for all we know, we could be completely off the mark here, and it's something completely different. I rather doubt that, but you never know. You know, so far what we've seen has been rather surprising. So, you know, again, cautiously optimistic that we'll be seeing something brand new here.
And that's very true. And it's also very likely that we might be overthinking this and that Pokemon just won't get as detailed into the government structure of its world. Now, the one thing that we haven't really addressed is that these early episodes of the anime have already shown that they're going to talk about, or at least they're going to present, a lot of the regularly occurring elements from the games. We see that Ash is going to be meeting up with at least 4 of the trial captains. We see that he's meeting Lily. We see that he's going to get a Rotom Dex. We see he's going to be riding on Pokemon, and he's going to be encountering a whole bunch of different ones, including Tapu Koko. And then, even in the early episodes, he's going to get one of those Z rings, and he's going to be able to use a Z move on his Pikachu.
I'm not a fan of the Z move. I'm just going to leave that out there. I just think it's silly, but it seems like they're moving on and going to be adding a lot of them, so...
Yeah.
Well, it's like early on in X and Y, Ash didn't really do anything with Mega Evolution. In fact, I don't actually know if he did anything with Mega Evolution throughout the entire run. I think they just left it for the Mega Evolution specials, and then they gave Ash the whole Ash Greninja thing. But here, in at least the first handful of episodes, Ash is already having Pikachu use Gigavolt Havoc, and I'm guessing that's something that's going to run throughout the entirety of the anime, which means that this is going to change how battles work. Like, I can almost imagine a lot of the battles, at least early on, are going to be all about the battle building up to Ash using that Z move and having it be the sort of play of the game, as it were.
I definitely think you're right there, which almost might be an unfortunate screenwriting tactic. But then again, they've sort of had Pikachu have different sort of almost ultimate abilities. I mean, it used to be Volt Tackle. Was Volt Tackle for years and years was his finisher. So, I mean, I guess they can use a change of pace there.
No, Pikachu's been shown to have a lot of different moves throughout the years. Volt Tackle became the big thing in Generation 4. I think it was Electro Ball is the big thing as of Generation 4 or Generation 5. I don't remember what generation that move came out in off the top of my head. But they always show Pikachu using some kind of super powerful electric move, and really I think Gigavolt Havoc is just going to be that move for this generation. You know, we're still not entirely sure what the Z moves are going to be, but you know, they could be like, well, we do know that they're one-time use per battle. So there is that, but you know, we still don't know, at least in terms of game mechanics, you know, how much base power they have, and I realize this has absolutely no bearing on the anime whatsoever. But you know, it's basically Gigavolt Havoc is essentially becoming the new Volt Tackle. It's becoming the new Electro Ball. You know, it's becoming the new Thunderbolt. It's becoming Pikachu's new standard electric attack.
Yeah, I don't really know if there's anything else that we can really say about the anime that hasn't been shown. It's just that there's a lot that's coming up front, and I'm not sure if everybody's entirely on board with it, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I think that X and Y proved that the anime can be good, even if it doesn't necessarily stick to its own continuity very well. So I think we'll get used to the new style. I think we'll get used to the fact that Serena's not there. They're going to be replacing the cast again, and it's just going to be a lot of new that, give it a dozen episodes, we'll all be cool with. Or we'll all hate it, and we'll all hate it together. How about Generations? Did you get a chance to watch that?
Oh, yes, I did. I'm a big fan. So I, as a lot of you who are regulars on the forums know, I am sort of very much a sort of Generation 1, Generation 2 kind of guy. Big time nostalgia for the games I grew up with. So I went into this Pokemon Generations, I was like, okay, this is going to be pretty cool. And seeing Red again, I mean, I know Red got his own mini-series a few years back, but that was still cool to see. I really liked how they sort of set up all those small battles in the trailer, and you went through all the regions, and it felt like Ash's journey a little bit, but it was way more exciting, just because it was sort of very condensed. It was these cool battles, you get to see the legendaries, and then it ended up with Zygarde in the cave. So we're going to be asking a lot of questions about what was going on there. Was that sort of the search for the Z cells, like what's going on there? As for the actual first episode, I was a big fan. I've really liked the Looker storylines in the past games. I know they're sort of small portions, but at the same time, it's kind of a charming story. Looker's a pretty cool character. I'm a big fan of him. So kind of seeing him, I really sort of liked how they showed how sort of the gym looked on the inside, because that's not something you really see a lot in the show. You see sort of hints of these gyms, but you see sort of very sort of technologically advanced sort of facility. They've got that lobby in the middle. They've got lots of rooms off the side, and you kind of see how the police force operated. That was pretty cool to kind of see that they were using like actual kind of SWAT tactics and combining it with like the Machamp and the Arcanine, sort of blowing their way through into the facility.
Well, Arcanine's use was kind of questionable, let's be honest here.
That was kind of silly. I don't know why they did that, but it was still really kind of cool. I mean, we've never really seen like a SWAT team in Pokemon before. I mean, that was something we've never seen before in any sort of the media, and to kind of see them like using actual police tactics, like with the hand signals and Looker being like pointing and sort of gesturing, and it definitely felt like a sort of cop movie for a minute there. So I really kind of like how they're almost doing different genres we've never seen before. And I liked also that they kind of showed that Giovanni was kind of clever, and they mentioned that he gave away the 2 badges and then just sort of vanishes. So you're definitely wondering what's going to happen, if they're going to do another Team Rocket episode, or if they're going to show like the Elite Four. I don't know where they're going with this, but I'm definitely excited to see the next 3 or 4 episodes.
Now, I was watching the Looker and Giovanni episode again, and I noticed that there is a scene from the trailer that I used in my breakdown that has Giovanni in his Heart Gold Soul Silver clothing with these lights behind him. But that doesn't actually show up at the end of the episode when Giovanni puts the Exile attire on. So I think it's actually very likely we will get another episode with Giovanni during the Gold and Silver portion of Generations, because I've seen a few people bring up that maybe what they're going to do is they're just going to go in chronological order. And we got Red's journey to kind of get everybody in the mood, show you all of what Pokemon was, and get everybody excited. And then they went straight for the Generation 1 story. Like, I actually thought Looker and Team Rocket was going to be a little bit later on down the road. But no, that was kind of their opener.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, they definitely sort of jumped. I mean, they jumped all the way to the end of the Kanto story, pretty much, because that's the very end of the Kanto story. You beat Giovanni in the gym. He vanishes and is never seen again. So I don't think they're going to do, I know you kind of think they're going to do the Elite Four. I don't think they're going to do that at all. I think they're going to go right to Johto now.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it, that if they're going chronological, then the obvious next step is that Blue's challenge of the Kanto Elite Four, that's the obvious next episode. But I still feel like that's the best way to end the series. You start out with Red's journey, or I guess I really should say it was more like Pikachu's journey, because it focused more on Pikachu's perspective of the journey through the regions. But then you start with that, and then you end with Blue becoming champion, having defeated the Elite Four, and then here comes Red to have the final battle with him. Like, that's endgame stuff. Like, that feels appropriate to put at the end of your series.
Yeah, I see. I don't know how they're gonna end it. If I think it would feel right to kind of show Blue and Red go at it at the end, but they kind of did that already in Origins. They had Blue and Red have that really cool battle. They did Mewtwo.
Yeah, they've already shown it, so it doesn't really feel like it needs to be shown again. And what a lot of people seem to be forgetting is that this is supposed to be the untold stories. This is supposed to be the stuff that we haven't seen before. So showing off, big battle scenes between our main character, between our trainer and somebody else, like, this is part of the reason why I don't think we're going to get to see Ethan or Lyra fight Red on Mount Silver. As cool as it would be to see that animated, that's the endgame battle from Generation 2. We've already seen that.
But we could see that. I think the next episode will be them dealing with Giovanni. Actually, if I had to make a guess of what the next episode would be, I think we're going to see Ethan and or Lyra dealing with the Generation 2 rocket plan. because it sort of leads right in from where we left off on Giovanni. Giovanni going into exile, and then Team Rocket restarting in Johto, and then eventually, of course, you battle Team Giovanni himself at the end of Heart Gold, Soul Silver. So I think that's sort of going to be either the next episode or in episode 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. Because I think you're right about the chronological order. We're gonna see sort of a little story from Generation 1, then a little story from Generation 2, and then so on and so forth down the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, speaking of Ethan and/or Lyra, I think it seems pretty clear that we're going to see Ethan if we see anything of Generation 2, because they seem to like Ethan or Gold's design, or just they find him more recognizable in terms of the Johto storyline. But do you think there's actually a chance that we'll see Leaf, the other Generation 1 trainer, at any point during this? Like, are we going to figure out what is she doing this entire time? Or does she even exist when Red's running around?
That moment where you forgot that Leaf existed. I think that answers the question a little bit.
Sad, but yeah, that does seem to kind of be what a lot of people think in regards to her inclusion. Though it would be really nice to see her show up.
I agree. I would like to see her show up.
I think then that pretty much establishes what we're expecting from this Friday's episode, or at least episodes, because we could still get 2, but I think we're just gonna get the 1.
Oh, that would be amazing if we got 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean you're only getting excited for like 3 to 5 minutes, and these last 2 were 4 minutes. So if it's just another 4-minute episode, I don't want to overhype it too much, because as cool as it might be, it is only 4 minutes.
Hey, this one could be 5.
That's very true, and that extra minute could make all the difference. I mean, an extra minute is enough for an entire full battle. Okay, so before we move on, what did you think of Generations?
I mean, I've really liked what I've seen so far. I'm going to mention the one thing that I kept mentioning on the staff chat is, I do find it a little odd how Red had a Bulbasaur in Generations and then had a Charmander in Origins, but, obviously I've been told, and it is the case, that Origins and Generations are 2 separate things. So, obviously Red can have a Bulbasaur in one and a Charmander in the other. I really did like that first episode, where you basically see Red's continued adventure throughout the entire Pokemon world, or I should say the entire known Pokemon world through Generation 6, through Pikachu's perspective, which is a perspective, we really don't get, and throughout that entire time, he doesn't say a single word. He stays true to his silent protagonist status. As for the second episode, I really, really do like what they've done with Looker. I'm a big fan of the trench coat look in general, but, the one thing that the second episode really made me think about is, how secure is any building in the Pokemon world? Like, if the police's Magnemite can break down an electronic lock, what if some burglar wants to break into someone's house using a Magnemite? Or what if somebody's got a Machamp and they want to bust through someone's wall? Like, no place in the Pokemon world is secure.
That's actually a very good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but I suppose the assumption is that everybody owns a Pokemon, so if somebody does try and break in with the help of a Magnemite or something, then the assumption is that your Lillipup or your Meowth or whatever is going to be able to go to bat with you. Because, I mean, we don't obviously have many weapons in the core Pokemon series. I mean, even in Generations, when that SWAT officer or that Interpol officer goes for his holster, it just has a Pokeball in it, which I thought was actually kind of funny. And actually, you brought up a very good point here that I just wanted to emphasize. I was very surprised to find out that Generations Red, or Generation, is not actually the same as Origin. Okay, that's just too painful. We're not going with that.
That's me level bad.
Origins Red and Generations Red are not the same person, because Origins Red did not use a Pikachu. Generations Red obviously made quite active use of a Pikachu, which, I don't know, it's just, I fully expected Generation was going to be sort of a side story or a follow-up or a sequel, and it looks like it's just something completely on its own.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I actually forgot about that minor difference.
Alright, so I think that pretty much wraps up everything for Generations, because again, there's only like, 8 minutes collectively to talk about, and I mean, we could probably sit here and just poke holes in things and break it down for hours, and it'd be fun. But we are actually getting...
Or we could just sit here and pontificate for a while.
I've already proven that I am terrible at that.
What have we done for the last 45 minutes anyway?
Oh my goodness, we're at 45 minutes. Let's wrap this up by talking about the news that we're supposed to get on the 20th. Now that's going to be at 10 p.m. Japan Standard Time, which is the standard format. So that's 6 a.m. my time, which is Pacific, and 9 a.m. your time, Hanzo. And then we don't have anybody in Europe, but that is going to be at 2 or 3 p.m., depending on your location.
Yeah, I'm boring. I'm in Central U.S. time.
Yeah, nobody cares about Central U.S., right?
Nah, not when you've got people from both coasts there.
Actually, my family's from Illinois, so... Anyway, so what do you guys think we're going to get? Because we got that Koro reveal of Rugarugan, but they didn't talk about it this last week like I thought they were. So are they going to reveal it this upcoming Tuesday, or are we going to get something else?
I feel like Rugarugan is a possibility. You know, maybe we'll actually get the English name of Rugarugan. You know, they might explain that a little more. They might elaborate a little bit more on, you know, the connection between Rockruff and the Alolan starters. Maybe they'll just reveal more Ultra Beasts. Because there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are at least a few others that they need to reveal, or that will be in the game. Other than that, maybe they'll reveal more trial captains, because I'm assuming there are going to be more than the ones that we've just seen. But it's all just speculation.
That's pretty much how I feel too. I don't think we're going to get anything earth-shattering. I'm thinking maybe we'll get another Kahuna, maybe another trial captain. Probably, maybe, I would assume an Ultra Beast or two, or at least some sort of concept of what the heck they are. That's what I would like to see, is some sort of clarification of what the heck the Ultra Beasts actually are. So that would be sort of my wish list for the news, but I'm not expecting anything too grand.
I do hope that they don't give us too much on the Ultra Beasts, just because they're supposed to be mysterious. If you talk about them too much before launch, then what mystery is there to actually discover? And I know that the mystery only works the first time you go through the games, but I would hope that they would leave at least some of it a secret.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's no fun in playing a game if all the plot twists have been revealed to you already. But, you know, so again, that's why I'm thinking we're not going to really get anything earth-shattering here. But, you know, you might get one or two more Ultra Beasts revealed, you might get a Kahuna, you might get more Trial Captains. You know, we still don't know exactly how many Trial Captains there are going to be, because it has been mentioned that there are multiples, or there's a possibility for there being multiple Trial Captains per island. You know, people assume that that's going to be 8. What if there is one for each type? That'd be pretty cool.
There's gotta be 8.
No, I think at this point it seems to me like we're going to get more than 8, because they're already highlighting these 4 that we know quite prominently. I mean, they're going to even be central characters early on in the anime. If that's half of the trial captains in the game, then that just feels like too much overexposure.
I'm going to assume there's 8 until we have 9 revealed.
Yeah, okay, fine. You can go with that.
I don't think they're going to stray too far from that mold.
Yeah, they're already breaking traditions quite a bit anyways.
You know what they say about making assumptions, right?
Yup.
All right, well, on that note, I think that's going to close off the conversation. I mean, we'll just have to see what happens on Tuesday, which I'll be getting up bright and early for, again.
I'll be stuck in the office, so I'll always see it live.
I'll probably be driving to work.
The joys of them releasing stuff so early. It's like it's a Tuesday morning. Come on. Who is able to sit down and watch these when they go up on a Tuesday morning? Or maybe we're just maybe we're just a little too obsessive in that we want to watch these the minute they go out.
Yeah, I usually just read it up on Twitter 20 minutes later.
Actually, to be honest, the last several videos, I've just looked at the feeds from Bulba News and the Bulbagarden Twitter channel and clicked on them from there. So,
well, then I'll have to make sure that I'm on my A game and getting those out for you. So yeah, that's going to close it off for our discussion today. Thank you guys for showing up. I realized earlier that we didn't actually specify what your roles were in Bulbagarden, so would you mind clarifying that a little bit?
Sure. So I am currently one of the 2 deputy head administrators. I used to be the head of the role-playing game section, which was a title I've held for probably 6 years on and off at this point. So I've been there for a while. I also used to be the head of the blog section. I was that for probably 3 or 4 years. But I've been an administrator now for about 4 or 5 months, and one of the 2 deputy head administrators for the last 2 months.
I've been moderator of Fun and Games in the War Room for about 6 months now.
So, thank you guys very much for tuning in for this discussion. Thank you very much to Hanzo and Maniacal Engineer for showing up to talk about this with me, and I'm very excited to see what we're going to get on Tuesday. So, thank you very much again, guys, and take care, trainers.